No surprise, Caleb Williams goes first overall to the Chicago Bears. Pete Prisco, what's your grade?
A-. Look, I like the kid. I think there's some flaws in his game. I would have went in a different direction, you know that. But he's got a ton of talent, and he's going into a great situation. A- is the grade.
Rick, our buddy Pete Prisco has an A- for Caleb. Is that a little harsh for one of the best players that we've seen in a long time at the quarterback position?
Of course it's harsh. This is an A+. This is going to be a franchise game-changing quarterback for them. He is one of the most unique playmakers I've seen outside the pocket. His release, his ability to give different arm angles reminded me a lot of Aaron Rodgers, what I talked about earlier. And I think he's going to be a game changer for the Chicago Bears.
Pete was alluding to the fact that he would have taken Jaden Daniels there, perhaps. No such luck. Chicago gets their quarterback in Caleb Williams. The Washington Commanders needed a quarterback. The Washington Commanders get a quarterback at 2. Pete, I'm going to steal your thunder here. No player made greater strides than Jaden Daniels. What is your grade for this pick?
I gave it an A. I think this is a great situation for him. They have a lot of talented players on the outside. It's a new owner, a new coach, a great situation for a young quarterback, and I think he's going to be a big-time player both with his legs and throwing the football. The grade is an A.
Pete gives him an A. Rick, I think the situation is good. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, no, I think this is a great pick for the Commanders. It fit what Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator, does. He's worked with Kyle Murray, so he knows all these types of quarterbacks, how athletic they are, how to utilize them. So I think this is a great matchup. And as you said earlier, this guy probably made the biggest strides from 2022 to 2023.
Thank you, Rick. The Heisman Trophy winner is headed to Washington. They took Drake May, one of the youngest quarterbacks in this class. What's the grade for the New England Patriots?
I gave it a B. And again, I like Drake May. I just think there's going to be a little process of him fine-tuning his mechanics. The mechanics waned last year. He wasn't the same quarterback. It's going to take him a little time. But in the end, he is one of those prototypical walk in the room, look like a quarterback, big, tall, and can throw it from the pocket. So I give it a B.
I actually think that grade's accurate, Rick. The B makes sense. His footwork was all over the place last year, Drake May. Is it a situation where he has to sit for a little bit?
Yeah, no, and he's going to a great situation in New England. They signed Jacoby Brissett. That'll be a great quarterback to learn from. They don't have to throw him in right away. We were down at his pro day. He had an outstanding pro day. When you watched the 22 tape, you were very impressed and thought maybe he might be the overall #1 pick. This year he took a step back. They didn't have the same talent around him, but I think this is a great pick for the New England Patriots.
And it makes sense for New England not having that talent around him because now they need to go out and get some wide receivers, maybe some offensive tackle help. They got the quarterback situation taken care of. They didn't trade down. Drake May is their quarterback in New England. The Arizona Cardinals stay put, and they take who I think is the best wide receiver in this class. I'm interested to hear what you think, Marvin Harrison Jr.
Well, I don't think he's the best wide receiver in the class. I think Malik Neighbors will be, but they're both going to be great players. I'm splitting hairs. I gave this a B+ because I would have taken Neighbors in this spot, but Marvin Harrison is talented, big, strong, can get down the field. B+ is the grade.
All right, Pete, gives us a B+ here. Rick, you were all about competing. We didn't see Marvin compete in the pre-draft process. Do you care?
Yeah, I do a little bit,
Okay.
but I do think he's going to be a great receiver. Like I said, he reminds me a lot of Larry Fitzgerald. I think he's going to be a Pro Bowl caliber receiver. I think that his ability to go up and get the ball, his ability to run after the catch is underrated.
Yep.
He didn't run the 40. They say he ran 22 miles an hour, whatever that means on the GPS tracking system. I didn't like the way he handled the pre-draft process, but he's going to be a great NFL receiver.
Rick may not have liked it. You know who did like it, Rick? Kyler Murray, because now he has Marvin Harrison to throw bombs to all next season for the Arizona Cardinals. No trades yet. Pete, the Chargers decide not to go with the right tackle, which they need. They go with left tackle Joe Alt, arguably the best offensive tackle in this class. What's your grade?
Yeah, look, he's a great player at left tackle, but now what do? Do you transition him to the right side, or are they going to move Slater to the right side? Slater's a all-pro left tackle. It makes no sense to me. I probably would have gone in a different direction. I probably would have taken J.C. Latham, so the grade is a B. I like the player. I just really unsure about the fit.
I think Pete's onto something too, Rick. So you have on the left side Rashawn Slater, first-round pick. Now you draft another left tackle, and the question becomes, how do you sort this out? Because you still have needs on the right side.
Yeah, I'm sure during their draft meetings they talked about this, and if we do get an opportunity to take Joe Alt, which was going to be an offensive lineman all the way now, and I think they know they're going to be able to get a receiver later on in the draft as the draft proceeds. But you have two left tackles. Which one's going to move over to the right? If they put Joe Alt over to the right side, keep him there so he can get adjusted to the right side of that offensive line.
Would you have taken J.C. Latham here instead?
I like J.C. Latham because of the run blocking, because I think he's the most explosive run blocker. So I agree with Pete. Actually, J.C. Latham's a better fit,
Yep.
but Joe Alt may be the top player on their board. They went with their board instead of just a need.
We know that Jim Harbaugh is going to run the ball, and Joe Walton is going to help accomplish that. Justin Herbert, happy? We'll find out. No drama here in that the Giants didn't trade for a quarterback, Pete. Instead, they get your wide receiver one and Malik Neighbors. What do you think of the pick? What's the grade?
I love it. It's an A+. I love this pick in a lot of ways. They didn't take J.J. McCarthy, which would have been a reach. They stand pat. They drafted playmaker, who I think is the best wide receiver in this draft. They haven't had a great wide receiver since Odell Beckham. Well, they have one now. Malik Neighbors, pick A+.
I can't believe that I'm agreeing with most of Pete's grades here, but let's go down the roster here. Jalen Hyatt, Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson. This pick makes a lot of sense on a number of levels.
Yeah, they needed to get playmakers around Daniel Jones, and now we'll find out what Daniel Jones is as a quarterback. They spend a lot of money on the offensive line to try to upgrade that through free agency. This gives them an offensive playmaker, an explosive offensive playmaker. So I'm excited to see if Daniel Jones is a future quarterback for the New York Giants with Malik Neighbors helping him out.
More explosive than Marvin Harrison Jr.?
Yes, way more explosive than Marvin. I'm going to agree with Pete here on this one, on the explosiveness. I told you that he reminded me a lot, not as a receiver, but as an explosive athlete, like when we drafted Percy Harvin.
You did draft Percy Harvin. You also drafted Justin Jefferson. And Daniel Jones just got a quarterback, and Malik Neighbors, he's headed to New York. Pete, the Titans desperately needed a left tackle, and they go with right tackle J.C. Latham. Sort of a surprise pick here. What is your grade?
I give it a B+. It is a little bit of a surprise, but as Rick can tell you, and he's been around that program a lot, they cross-train their offensive linemen a lot at Alabama. I think he can move to the left side. He's a violent player. Rick mentioned it earlier. He's one of the best offensive linemen in terms of run blocking. He needs to get a little bit more prepared in terms of his technique as a pass blocker, but this is still a good pick for them because they got themselves one nasty offensive lineman, B+.
All right, B+ from Pete there. J.C. Latham blocks out the sun. He played right tackle at Alabama, also played right guard before that. How do we know, number one, whether he can play on the other side, or number two, do you leave him at right tackle and lean on someone else?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they went down there at the pro day and worked him on the left side to see if he can adjust to that. I think when you watch him on tape, he, to me, was the most explosive run blocker coming out of this year's draft. The problem was, does he have left tackle feet? Now, I know he can do right tackle. I know he can anchor versus power. He's susceptible to inside pass rush moves, but I'm sure they worked him out and they discussed this. If they're going to select him, which they did, put him at left tackle. That's where you're going to play him. If not, keep him at right tackle and let's go.
I know you like J.C. Latham. Would you take Olufashinu here instead?
I was a little surprised because I thought Fashanu was going to be a pure left tackle, something they desperately need, and they went with a better run blocker.
Okay, so Tennessee Titans last year took Peter Skoronski. He's their left guard. Now they have their right tackle out of Alabama, J.C. Latham. At pick number 8, Pete, the Falcons need defensive tackle, edge rusher, cornerback, all top players at that position on the board. They went with Michael Penix Jr., a quarterback we both like. Please give me your grade. I am waiting with bated breath.
I gave it a B-, and you know I like the player. I think he's got all the skills to be a good starting quarterback in this league, but it makes no sense to me from that standpoint. You have Kirk Cousins. You paid Kirk Cousins. I know they have a 2-year out on him, so that means he'll have to sit for 2 years behind Kirk Cousins and then play. I don't love this pick for the Falcons. Good player, bad situation, don't love it, B-.
Yeah, good player. The situation is curious. I think B- is Pete getting soft in his grading here.
Yeah.
I'll ask you this, Rick. When we saw Raheem Morris first time around as a head coach with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over a decade ago, do you know who he drafted first as a defensive player?
Josh Freeman.
Took Josh Freeman. He's a defensive coordinator. They went with quarterback Josh Freeman. Hopefully this works out better. But again, to Pete's point, it doesn't make a lot of sense given that you just signed Kirk Cousins to that 4-year, $180 million deal.
Yeah, and my biggest question is, and just talking about Michael Penix Jr., he's the best deep ball thrower. We've talked about that. He's aced everything that we've seen through this pre-draft process, from the Senior Bowl to the Combine to his pro day. He ran in the 4.4s, which no one thought he can do. But did you let Kirk Cousins know that you're going to draft a quarterback at number 8. Now, they gave a lot of money to Kirk Cousins, and this kid's going to have to sit. But I'm curious to see at the press conference if they're going to ask, did you talk to Kirk Cousins?
Michael Penix Jr. now the quarterback in Atlanta with their 8th overall pick. Kirk Cousins, if you don't know, Michael Penix Jr. is coming to Atlanta. The Bears get Caleb Williams 1st overall. Now they're back on the clock at pick 9, and they get more offensive help for their future franchise quarterback, wide receiver Rome Odunze out of Washington. Pete, do you love the pick?
You know, I don't love the pick because they have other needs. I think they needed an edge rusher, but I do like it and understand it from this standpoint. At some point, you got to get a young receiver who can grow with the young quarterback. So I get it. I understand it. Now you have 3 receivers. You can put up a lot of points in that offense. They're going to score a bunch. But I think they still need to address edge. Maybe they'll do that later in the draft. I would have taken an edge player here, but I understand the process. B+.
I think Pete's right all around, B+, and also the other needs. They only have 4 picks total in this draft, but you get not only a fantastic football player who made huge strides in 2023 in Rome Odunze, but also a guy who is a culture guy, locker room guy day one that's going to make that team better.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see with the Chicago Bears now with Swift at running back, with DJ Moore, with Keenan Allen, and now you're throwing Rome Odunze. They're going to put a lot of points up on the board. So they're giving this quarterback, Caleb Williams, the opportunity that maybe Justin Fields didn't have with all the weapons they put around him on the offensive side of the ball.
I'm laughing, but do you think Justin Fields is watching this draft going, hey, wait a second, what's going on? New offensive coordinator Shane Waldron, new quarterback Caleb Williams, and now new wide receiver at pick 9, Rome Odunze. 10 picks, Pete. 5 quarterbacks are already off the board. QB5, J.J. McCarthy. The Vikings trade up from pick 11 to pick 10 to get their quarterback out of Michigan. What do you think? What's your grade?
Yeah, I gave it a C+. You know I don't love the player. I think he's a serviceable quarterback. I don't think he's going to be a superstar quarterback. It's a great situation with Kevin O'Connell and that group in there to teach him how to play quarterback. But again, I don't love him as a player. I don't love this pick. I gave it a C+.
All right, Rick, so serviceable is a word that Pete used to describe J.J. McCarthy. I thought he got pushed up throughout the draft process, didn't end up going in the top 5. Falls here to 10. Feels like a great situation in Kevin O'Connell. What do you think about this for J.J. McCarthy?
Yeah, and they brought in Josh McCown as their quarterback coach, so I think this is a great fit for him. I know they spent a lot of time and private workouts up at the University of Michigan, so this will fit what Kevin O'Connell does on the offensive side of the ball. I actually referred to him as a more athletic Kirk Cousins. I think he can develop into that. Right now, you don't know because you didn't see him do a lot of throwing at Michigan, but he is a leader, he is a winner, and he'll have an opportunity to show that he is a starting quarterback in this league, being up in Minnesota.
And we've said for weeks that it looked like the Vikings are going to have to give up both first rounders, 11 and 23. Only move up one spot, only give up a little bit. They still have pick 23, and that's coming up later. But for now, Minnesota gets their quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. The Jets trade down one spot and still get my best offensive tackle in this class, Olafashnu. Pete, what do you think? What's your grade for the New York Jets?
I gave it a B-. This is clearly a pick that doesn't scream all in, or Aaron Rodgers made the pick, because if they would have taken maybe Brock Bowers or maybe even moved down again. Look, he's not going to play right away if they're healthy on the offensive line, so it's a pick for the future. I like the player. I just think that this is one of those situations. If the Jets are all in with Aaron Rodgers, this doesn't scream that to me.
Rick, Pete makes a good point. If we're all in with Aaron Rodgers, who's coming off the Achilles injury, who's pushing 40, Olafashnu feels a huge need, not necessarily in 2024. So what's the thinking here in terms of Olu going to New York?
Well, Tyron Smith, how many times has he stayed healthy through an entire season? So I think this is a great pick. Joe Douglas, was a former offensive lineman as well. So I think it filled a need because I wouldn't really trust that Smith can get through a full 17-game season, and they have to keep Aaron Rodgers upright, and this gives them the best opportunity to do that.
And I think that's right. The wide receivers are off the board, maybe Brock Bowers, but with Olafashnu, you're protecting Aaron Rodgers, who only managed 4 snaps last year. He is headed to New York to play for the Jets. The Broncos had to get a quarterback, and they get Bo Nix at pick 12. I cannot wait to hear your grade for this pick.
Well, I think it's too high for Bo Nix. I did have the Broncos taking him in my mock draft, but trading back to do it. They loved him. I mean, this is one of those guys that fit in with what Sean Payton wanted to do. I gave it a C- because of where they picked him. But if you don't have a quarterback, you have to address that position. I get it. It's much like J.J. McCarthy with the Vikings. I don't love the players, but I understand the process. C-.
So, Rick, 5 quarterbacks are already off the board. As Pete mentioned, the Broncos had to have a quarterback. They don't have a lot in the way of draft capital. Are you okay with this pick? Too high for you? Would you trade it down? What's the plan?
I think if I was Denver, I would have maybe tried to trade down, although you had the threat of the Las Vegas Raiders right there and potentially taking a Bo Nix if they moved back behind them. So it's interesting to see how Minnesota just moved up one spot. So there must have been Denver calling. It might have been the Vegas calling, trying to jockey to go get J.J. McCarthy. But Bo Nix, the biggest question mark on him is, can he run an NFL offense? He went through a lot of screens, a lot of quick hitting throws, a lot of RPOs. Can he adjust to the system John Payton runs with the Denver Broncos?
Yeah, and we're going to talk about J.J. McCarthy having success with Kevin O'Connell at the next level. Certainly Sean Payton gets the most out of his quarterbacks, and now Bo Nix will have that opportunity because he's headed to Denver. The quarterbacks are gone. The offensive line, there's a run on those players. Every defensive player is out there, Pete Prisco. But what do we do? The Raiders take tight end Brock Bowers. What is your grade?
I don't like this pick at all. I gave it a C, and here's why. They have needs on the offensive line, right tackle. They have needs on defense as well, and there's a lot of good defensive players on the board, and you take a luxury pick. That's what this is. It's a luxury pick taking Brock Bowers. You have Michael Mayer. You got him last year. You signed Harrison Bryant from the Cleveland Browns. This is a luxury pick. I would have gone in a different direction. I gave it a C.
So, Rick, explain to me, if you have Michael Mayer, last year's second-round pick, Harrison Bryant, who played for Cleveland, comes over to Las Vegas. You have needs along the offensive line. You need a quarterback. Those are all gone. And you have every single defensive player there. How are we settling on Brock Bowers?
Yeah, I think they should have maybe looked at some of these offensive linemen, but I think that Brock Bowers was so high on their draft board that he was sticking out like a sore thumb. Understand what a unique playmaker he is for the position. He improved as a run blocker, so this is going to give Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell, whoever the quarterback's going to be, another offensive weapon.
All right, they can't get the quarterback because they're all off the board, so they get one of the best offensive players. Tight end Brock Bowers is headed to Las Vegas. The Saints needed offensive line help. They go with right tackle Tully Fuaga out of Oregon State. They're concerns about Ryan Ramczyk's health. Pete, how do you grade this pick?
I gave it a B+. Obviously, they have major needs on that offensive line. It's been a problem for them for a long time. It continues to be a problem. You have to protect your quarterback. I like this kid. He's a nasty, violent player. He'll fit in perfectly in New Orleans. I give it a B+. All
right, Rick, the 4th offensive lineman off the board. Maybe the biggest surprise is that GM Mickey Loomis didn't trade up to perhaps try to get another offensive lineman. But Fuaga is a fantastic player. It feels like he's going to be on the right side. Now the question becomes, what's Ryan Ramczyk's situation with the health?
Yeah, and I don't know where he's at health-wise. I don't know what they're going to do because they're struggling at the left tackle as well with Penning. But this kid's going to come in and start day one. He's a tone setter up front on the offensive line. He'll be able to protect Derek Carr because Derek Carr got hit way too many times last year. So I think this is a great pick for the New Orleans Saints.
This was the Saints' biggest need, and they fill it without having to trade up. Tully Fuaga heading to New Orleans. Better, technically sound pass rusher in this draft class than Latu, Pete. But he also has a medical history, and he's the first defensive player off the board headed to Indianapolis. What is your grade?
We see that this fills a need, but I thought there were better options on the board than Latu. And you mentioned the medicals. That's a concern. I know a lot of teams passed him, some didn't with the neck injury, but this is a good player when he's healthy. It's just how long will he hold up? Will there be any issues? I don't love the pick. I gave it a B-.
So Pete talked about the injury history. Had to retire at one point before he transferred to UCLA. We talked to him at the Combine. Very driven young man, had football taken away from him, and a fantastic football player. Any concerns about him being the first defensive player off the board with that injury history?
Well, there's no concern in Indianapolis, so they wouldn't have taken him. So, and you're talking about a neck. That's not a knee, not an ankle, not an elbow. This is a neck injury. So they must have felt very comfortable. But I'll say this, he is probably the most polished pass rusher out of anyone coming out in this year's draft. The question is, how high is his ceiling compared to some of these other guys that were still left on the board?
And I think you make a good point, Rick, because Latu's going to hit the ground running. He's going to get after the quarterback if he stays healthy. This could end up being a fantastic pick for the Indianapolis Colts. Byron Murphy was my favorite defensive player in this draft. I thought he had a chance to be the first defensive player off the board. He'd last till pick 16, Pete. He's headed to Seattle. What is your grade?
Love this pick. I gave it an A. You mentioned Murphy is so talented. And remember, Mike McDonald comes from the Baltimore Ravens. You know who dominated that defense last year? Justin Madubuike. You know who they compare him to? Byron Murphy. There's a real strong comparison there. Love this pick for Seattle. I gave it an A.
An A feels about right, maybe even A+ because he's such a special player. What do you got?
Yeah, no, I would think this is an A+, and John Schneider was smiling as soon as he saw him sitting there. This was a no-brainer pick for me. With Mike McDonald coming in as a new head coach, defensive coordinator from Baltimore, I agree with Pete. He is Matabiki-like traits, but he can play the run, and he can definitely rush the passer inside.
Whether it's Justin Matabike or Grady Jarrett, the player you're getting in the interior defensive line for Seattle is truly special. So special, in fact, that Rick marveled at his calves in real time at the Combine. He's taking those calves to Seattle. Byron Murphy, you're headed to be a Seahawk. The Vikings get their quarterback, and now they trade up from 23 to 17, Pete, and they're coming back for Dallas Turner, edge rusher out of Alabama. What is your grade?
This is an A. You know how I feel about Dallas Turner. I've been raving about him for years. I think his best football is in front of him. I don't think you always saw his best last year at Alabama. You will see it with the Minnesota Vikings. They know a thing or two, by the way, of drafting edge rushers. This is a great pick for the Vikings.
I don't know what you know about drafting edge rushers. Daniil Hunter, DJ Wanham, maybe you know something. Dallas Turner, you know quite well, talking with him at Alabama, special player. He looked like he was fired up that he wasn't the first defensive player off the board.
Yeah, no, and he's going to have a huge chip on his shoulder, and it's important in Brian Flores' defense that they get pressure on the quarterback. They lost Daniil Hunter, DJ Wanham. They went out and signed Grenard from Houston. They went out and Van Ginkel signed him from Miami. Now you throw Dallas Turner in this mix, they're going to have three great edge rushers up there that can get after the quarterback.
When you're not yelling at me, what do you say all the time? You can never have enough
pass rushers.
Dallas Turner is that, and then some. He is headed to Minnesota to work with Brian Flores. All right, Pete, you got to protect Joe Burrow, and the Bengals are serious about doing that. They add an enormous human being, right tackle out of Georgia. Amarius Mims hasn't played a lot of football. What is your grade?
I gave it a B-. This is one of those situations where it's feast or famine. That's the way I see Amarius Mims. I think he could end up being one of the best players in this draft, a star of stars, or he could be a problem in about 3 or 4 years. We don't know. There's not a lot of tape on him. He hasn't played a lot of football. At times he has looked lazy on the tape. So I am concerned about this, but there's a huge upside. If they hit on it, it's going to be in a big way.
Here's the thing, the tape we do have, though, Rick, the very first start of his career was in the national playoff game against Ohio State, and he looked like he belonged. He'd been playing SEC football for 3 years. He is a special talent, but again, only 8 starts, had an ankle injury last year. This feels about right for me. What do you think for the Bengals here?
Yeah, they got Orlando Brown on the left, Trent Brown on the right, so they don't have to insert him right away. I'm sure he'll come in, compete. I'm anxious to see because of his length, and I think he's a left tackle athlete. Ooh. If they put him over to the left side and let him develop there, or go compete with Trent Brown on the right side, who's been on and off since he came from New England to the Cincinnati Bengals.
And as Pete sort of alluded to, had we seen Mims play, say, a complete season and be healthy and saw the same signs we saw in the Ohio State game, he could have been a top 10 pick, correct?
Yeah, no, the way he was trending, but also he got hurt at the Combine. So there is a little bit of a track record there of is he going to be able to stay on the field once he gets on the field? Well,
if Amarius Mims is healthy, that means Joe Burrow is healthy, and that's why he is headed to Cincinnati. All right, Pete, the Rams finally have a pick in the Sean McVay era. They don't go offense. Instead, they get Jared First, edge rusher. Somehow the third edge rusher off the board. Grade this pick for me.
Yeah, I gave it a B+, and here's why. We know they lost Aaron Donald, but they have 2 guys that can play inside. They needed an edge rusher, and I like Verse. Verse is a tough, physical player. He'll step in right away. He'll push for time right away. In fact, I bet he starts right away. He's a good player. I don't think he's ever going to be a dynamic edge player, but I think he's going to be a darn good one, B+.
Yeah, B+ feels about right. I think he has a chance to be dynamic as well, Rick. I'll ask you this. The Rams consistently crush these drafts. I think they got great value with Jared Verse here at 19. What do you think about this pick?
Yeah, no, I thought it was a great pick for them, and they have to get pressure on the quarterback, and they hit on the Tennessee kid, Byron Young, last year. They got Kobe Turner, your guy, who also gave him some inside pass rush. Now to get Jared Verse, who to me is the most complete defensive end as far as being able to play the run and rush the quarterback off the edge.
Yeah, you can see many a highlight where he throws tackles into quarterbacks for sacks. We'll see if he does that at the next level. He is headed to Los Angeles to play for the Rams. The Steelers had needed tackle. They have needed center. Pete, Troy Fautanu out of Washington offers potentially 5-position flexibility, play left tackle for the Huskies. Grade this pick for me.
I gave it a B. And this is a perfect Pittsburgh Steelers pick. Get a tough, physical, nasty guy on the offensive line who's good in run blocking and also can pass protect. And remember, they drafted Broderick Jones last year. He's one of their tackles. Now this guy might be able to be the other one for the long run. I like it. I gave it a B.
I like this pick a lot too, Rick. And Troy Fautanu played volleyball in high school. You see some of that athleticism when he takes the field. His favorite player growing up, Troy Polamalu, he wore number 43. Now he's headed to Pittsburgh. The only knock on him is that he plays in shorts. I think that bothers you a lot.
Yeah, he's going to have to wear pants when he plays in the NFL, but love this pick for Pittsburgh because of the position flexibility that he brings. So he'll be one of their best 5 offensive linemen as they try to sort this out. He can play guard, he can play center, he can play tackle. So it'll be interesting where they line him up, but this was a great pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
We know how the Steelers feel about it. Would you have considered Graham Barton out of Duke here?
I think this kid is a better player than Graham Barton.
I agree. The Steelers agree as well. And as Pete noted, Broderick Jones, first-round pick last year at offensive tackle. They circle back, get another offensive lineman this year in round 1 with Troy Fautanu. The offense needed help on the offensive side of the ball. They need help on the defensive side of the ball. And Pete, they went with one of your favorite players, Penn State edge rusher, Chop Robinson. Give me your grade.
I gave this an A. I love this pick. I mean, you look at their pass rush situation, it's not very good right now. You have Chubb coming off an injury. You have Jalen Phillips coming off an Achilles injury. You need to get a young pass rusher in there. Chop Robinson has the best first step of anybody in this draft in terms of rushing the passer. I love the pick. I gave it an A.
It's a good pick. It feels like pretty good value. No one played with a higher motor last season, Rick. And when I asked Pete earlier, well, what about the fact that Chop isn't as stout against the run as you want him to be? He said, well, you just let him rush the passer as a quarterback.
Yeah, and I think he'll be a designated pass rusher for him initially. I think he'll grow into an every down defensive end or outside linebacker. Anthony Weaver's got to be chopping at the bit for getting a guy of this talent. And remember, they lost Van Ginkel as well, who went to Minnesota. So this will definitely help the pass rush, especially what Pete referred to as both of their edge rushers have been injured.
That's right. We know what they can do on offense with Tua and Tyreek and company. Now they bolster the edge rush position. Chop Robinson headed to South Florida. It sure felt like the Philadelphia Eagles were going to have to trade up to get one of these top-flight cornerbacks. Pete, they stay put. Cornerback 1 falls into their lap. They take Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo. Grade this pick for me.
I gave it a B+. Kudos to Howie Roseman. I mean, he sits there, he waits, he gets the best corner in the draft, and this fills a need. Remember, he might not play right away. They have some age on the outside that's starting to become a concern, but this guy can step in and give them a real lift in the secondary, and they had real coverage problems last year. I gave it a B+.
Rick, he's long, he's fast, he's physical, pass breakup potential. Maybe you want better ball skills, but he showed me enough to be the cornerback 1 for me, too.
There's a difference between ball skills and being able to catch the ball. Now, he's a PBU machine when you watch him at Toledo. I think the biggest question was he going to be able to step up at the next level coming out of a MAC school? Well, he proved that point down at the Senior Bowl. He was the best corner we saw down there. He's knocked out the pre-draft process with Bradbury kind of on the downside, didn't have a great year last year. Slay getting older. This is a big pick and a great pick for the Philadelphia Eagles.
Ran in the 4.3s in the pre-draft process, was unstoppable as a cornerback in the Senior Bowl, which is hard to get your brain around. And now he is headed to the city of brotherly love. Going to be a cornerback for the Philadelphia Eagles. The Jaguars trade down, and they have a cornerback fall in their lap. But, Pete, they decide to go in another direction. They take wide receiver out of LSU, Brian Thomas Jr. Grade this one for me.
You know, I gave it a B+. Early in the draft process, I thought they would look at Brian Thomas. I wasn't so sure as they went throughout the draft process, but this is a good pick, and here's why. Zay Jones, 1 year left on his deal. He's getting up in the years. You know, Kirk cost them a lot of money, and they need a young receiver to develop with Trevor Lawrence for the long run. So I love Thomas. I think his best football is in front of him, B+.
He's a deep threat from day one, and we joked during the pre-draft process when we talked about it on the podcast that he ran more inside fades for touchdown than anyone on planet Earth. That's where you start him. How long until he develops the full route tree for Trevor Lawrence there?
Yeah, I think when you watched him in the beginning of the year and how he ended up at the end of the year, he made great strides as a route runner, great strides as a playmaker. I think he's a red zone threat. He's a deep vertical threat that the Jacksonville Jaguars definitely need for Trevor Lawrence.
Absolutely. Jaden Daniels told us at the Combine that he was the fastest among him, Brian Thomas Jr., and Malik Neighbors. Turns out Brian Thomas Jr. was the fastest of that trio. He's taking that speed to Jacksonville. All right, the Packers get offensive line help. David Bakhtiari is gone. Pete, Green Bay goes with Arizona tackle Jordan Morgan. Also could possibly play inside. What is your grade?
I didn't love this pick. I didn't love Morgan as much as some. I thought he would go in the first round. Where does he play? You know, there's talk that they might move Zach Tom, the right tackle, to center. Would he step in and play right tackle? I know a lot of people think he can play guard. I didn't love this pick. I think there were better options, Graham Barton being one of them. I gave him a C+.
So here's the thing, Rick, with Jordan Morgan. His arms are under 33 inches. And for people who don't know, that's considered right on the borderline of whether you're a tackle or a guard. I talked to teams that they weren't sure quite where to put him. And as Pete notes, are you going to move your good right tackle inside to add another player? Are you going to put him on the left side where Rasheed Walker currently sits? What are we doing with Jordan Morgan?
Yeah, this was kind of an interesting pick because I thought out of all the offensive linemen that have been taken, he was probably at the bottom of my pecking order, especially with Guyton still on the board, especially with Graham Barton still on the board. I think he has the athleticism to play tackle. The arm length is a concern. Be interesting to see where they line him up. Are they going to put him at guard? Are they going to keep him out at tackle? He is athletic enough to play offensive tackle, but he's so far away technically that I think they have a lot of work to do.
Well, if Packers fans want to be excited, you can watch Jordan Morgan have a pretty good afternoon against Latu last season. Now he headed to Green Bay to protect Jordan Love. This feels an obvious need, Pete. It feels like for Tampa Bay, they get Graham Barton, played left tackle at Duke. His future will be inside for the Buccaneers. What's your grade?
Yeah, I gave it an A. I love Graham Barton. I love the versatility. I think he can play guard, and they have an issue there at left guard. They can play center, where they had major problems last year at center. I think he steps in competes for the starting center job right away, and I wouldn't be surprised if he wins it. I love this pick for Tampa Bay. I give it an A.
This feels like a sneaky A pick all day long. I was sort of surprised that the Cowboys traded down 2 picks prior and allowed Graham Barton to fall to the Buccaneers. What do you think about this pick for Tampa Bay?
Yeah, I think Tampa filled a huge need, especially with Ryan Jensen retiring after all the injuries he has had. They have to be able to run the ball better. And Graham Barton, even though he played left tackle, if you go back to his freshman year, he actually started at center. So this is a great pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They got better up front. They're going to be able to run the ball better, which will give Baker Mayfield a better chance.
Right. This is a home run for Baker Mayfield. Protect him a little more. Replace Ryan Jensen. Graham Barton is headed to Tampa Bay. Missouri keeps pumping out defensive players that end up in the first round, Pete. The latest addition, Darius Robinson, edge, maybe even kicks inside. He is headed to Arizona. What do you think about this pick?
I gave it a B, and look, you mentioned the versatility. I think he can play outside. I think he can move him inside. He's going to be a nice inside rusher, I think, at times. And this is a team that needed defensive line help. I like this pick for Arizona. I think Robinson might be one of those guys that ends up being better on the next level than he was in college.
And I think he was pretty good at Missouri, so it's a scary proposition to think that he's going to actually improve. The Arizona Cardinals are having a pretty good draft so far with Marvin Harrison Jr. What do you think of Darius Robinson on the other side of the ball?
Yeah, I think this is a huge pick for Arizona Cardinals. I don't know if he's a pure edge pass rusher like the Chop Robinsons, the Dallas Turners, the Jared Verses, the Latus, but he's going to give them position flexibility. I bet by the time it's said and done, he's a base defensive end. They're going to slide him inside to create mismatches over offensive guards. Even though he didn't run fast at the combine, he plays a lot faster, and he's an explosive athlete. And
we saw that at the Senior Bowl time and time again, and you saw it at Missouri last year. Great job by Arizona in round 1. Get that wide receiver at number 4, and Marvin Harrison Jr. circle back at the bottom of round 1. Darius Robinson, edge rusher out of Missouri, headed to Arizona. Okay, Pete, let's start here. The Buffalo Bills trade out of this pick and allow the Kansas City Chiefs to come up to get 4-2-1 burner Xavier Worthy. I want to get your thoughts on this and your grade as well.
I love it. I love it. All you need to do is get some more speed for Patrick Mahomes. Remember when he had Tyreek Hill? Well, this kid flies just like him. It's a great move to go up and get him and add him to an offense. Remember, they added Hollywood Brown. He can run a little bit as well. They have the issue with Rashee Rice. So why not add a speed guy? I love it. I know Rick Spielman hates it because he hates little receivers.
Well, here's the thing. I had Xavier Worthy going to Kansas City Chiefs in my last mock draft. But the bigger issue for me, Rick, is why would the Buffalo Bills gift wrap a 4-2-1 burner who can win at all 3 levels and Xavier Worthy to the Kansas City Chiefs?
Well, they may have another receiver that was rated higher than Xavier Worthy, and we don't know that. But now look at Kansas City's offense with the addition of Hollywood Brown, with Xavier coming in, Worthy to add speed to that. I agree that Rashee Rice, I don't know how long he's going to be out. He's going to get suspended by the league. We'll probably determine that right before the season starts. But now look at this Kansas City offense with these two burners and with Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. This is going to be a team that's going to be still the probably the winner of next year's Super Bowl.
Rick making bold predictions on day one of the draft. And by the way, they still have Kadarius Toney on the roster, former first-round pick as well. The rich get richer either way. Xavier Worthy is blazing that 4.21 speed to Kansas City. Congratulations to the Chiefs yet again. Trade down, they pass on Graham Barton, and they get an athletic tackle, Pete, and Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. Grade this pick for me.
Yeah, I gave it a B. And look, there are some issues with Guyton. First and foremost, he played on the right side. What are they going to do with him? Is he going to move to the left side? What does it mean for Smith at left guard? Does he kick out the tackle? Do they keep him at guard? I think there's some options there. There was some inconsistency with Guyton, particularly on the right side, but I think this is a good, smart pick by the Cowboys. You get another offensive lineman to add to the mix.
So some teams had Tyler Guyton with left tackle ability. He played primarily on the right side. For Oklahoma, had a fantastic Senior Bowl. There are some moving pieces you have to sort through in Dallas. What do you think about Guyton going to the Cowboys?
Yeah,
here?
I wouldn't be surprised that they move him over to the left side. And I know he's played on the right side at Oklahoma, but he's more than athletic to move over to the left side. I do like his aggressiveness and the style that he plays with. This was a huge need that Dallas had to fill. And I bet if they put him over at left tackle, see if he can be the starter and keep Smith inside at guard, where I think he's better at guard than he is at left tackle.
Okay, the Cowboys actually get some draft picks by trading down, and they get their guy in offensive tackle, Tyler Guyton, out of Oklahoma. This young man feels like a Ravens pick, Pete. Nate Wiggins, cornerback out of Clemson, is headed to Baltimore to play in that secondary. What do you think about this grade-wise?
I love this pick. And I know people ping him because he doesn't tackle very well. But you know what? The Ravens have issues at corner. Marlon Humphrey was banged up last year. Stevens, the other corner's going into the final year of his contract. You need a cornerback. Wiggins is the best pure cover guy in this draft. The problem is he's not very big and he's not a great tackler. But you know what? The Ravens always find a way to make guys like this work. I like this pick. I gave it a B+.
I think Pete's right. I think the physicality maybe lacks in terms of the 175-ish frame, but he's willing, and we know he can cover. I think he can get better in run support, but he feels like a player that would fit on that Ravens defense. Yeah,
and you probably looked at maybe they were going to go offensive line, but all these offensive linemen ran before they were able to pick an offensive lineman because they do need someone at right tackle. But to get a corner, and I agree with Pete, they definitely needed a corner. Nate Wiggins is probably the best man cover corner in this draft. The one thing I'll say is that you may poke holes in the run game and run support, but he got much better than he showed in 22. So I think this is an excellent pick by the Baltimore Ravens.
The arrow is pointing up, as we like to say. And oh, by the way, he ran a 4.28, so he's plenty fast as well. Nate Wiggins headed to Baltimore. The 49ers have a ton of needs, perhaps on defense. But, Pete, they go wide receiver, and it's sort of a surprise pick here. Florida's Ricky Pearsall off the board for San Francisco. Grade this pick for me.
I gave it a C-. Look up luxury pick in the dictionary. You'll see this pick there. I don't get it. I mean, you have Brandon Ayuk, you have Samuel, you have other guys there as well. Jennings, what are you doing? What are you doing making this pick? I don't understand this at all. It makes no sense. And there are better options. McConkey's a better option. I think A.D. Mitchell was a better option. I don't understand this pick. Don't like it. Gave it a C-.
Rick, I wonder if they were in a position where they didn't feel like they could trade down, or maybe they just had Ricky Pearsall high on their board. In fact, maybe John Lynch liked Ricky Pearsall, but the only person that liked Ricky Pearsall more than John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, looking at him right here, Rick Spielman.
Yeah, I thought he was a very good receiver, very underrated receiver. He can play outside, he can play inside. He ran in the 4.3s, so you know he can stretch the field. The biggest question is, does this end Ayuk in San Francisco? Are they going to trade him? Sounds like since they took a first-round receiver, they're probably not going to be able to reach an extension with him. So I can see them maybe a future pick where they want to make sure that Brock Purdy still has weapons on the offensive side of the ball. Maybe it's a luxury pick, but I thought it was, in my opinion, one of the best receivers left in this draft in the first round.
Well, let me ask you this. Is this a situation where perhaps Brandon Ayuk now gets traded over the draft weekend because of this development?
I don't know. We'll see over the next couple of days, but if they probably tried to trade him and couldn't get a first-round pick for him, like A.J. Brown, like Hollywood Brown when Arizona and Philadelphia did that. So maybe he's still on the trading block. Maybe he's not going to get traded. But I think they got their replacement, Ricky Pearsall, for Brandon Ayuk.
Well, the 49ers get richer on offense. Kyle Shanahan's happy. Brock Purdy's happy. Ricky Pearsall's happy. Brandon Ayuk, we'll have to wait and see. Ricky Pearsall headed to the Bay Area. The Bills trade down not once but twice. They're out of the first round altogether. Here's who's coming up, Pete, the Carolina Panthers, and they are getting, no surprise here, a wide receiver, Xavier Legette. Finally gets Bryce Young some deep speed. Grade this pick for me.
Yeah, I give it a B+. I like him as a player. I know you said, and everybody says he's only a one-hit wonder, but the best football's in front of him. He's a physical kid. He can run a little bit, and you have to get Bryce Young weapons. You have to find out what he is. Give him some help. They've given him some help. They moved up a spot to get him. They've been linked to him a long time. I like to pick B+.
You know, it's funny, Dave Canales had to answer questions because Xavier Legette said to the media that if he were there at 33, the Panthers are going to take him, and Canales had to tiptoe around that. It turns out he was right. He didn't go 33. He went 32. One-year wonder, as Pete mentioned, that's something you talked about when we were on the podcast. But his tape is hard to not be impressed by in 2023.
No, his size, his athleticism, his ability to stretch down the field, that's what they didn't have last year. So in order for Bryce Young to have success, I think hiring Dave Canales as a head coach will definitely help Bryce Young moving forward. And now you add an offensive weapon that can stretch the field. This should be big for Carolina.
We talk a lot about Rome Odunze helping himself with a remarkable 2023 season. I think Xavier Legette's a close second because we watched Spencer Rattler early on and were wholly and repeatedly impressed with the way number 17 played for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, because he's one of those receivers in 50-50 contested situations. He has the athleticism and the size to go up and get the ball in contested catches.
All right, Rick, first pick of the second round. The Bills are finally getting their wide receiver, Keon Coleman, out of Florida State. I gave it an A-. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, no, I think this is a great fit in Buffalo. They need a big physical presence down the field. He plays a lot faster than he timed at the 40. This guy's going to go up and win contested situations. He's going to be a great red zone threat, so I think this was an excellent pick by the Buffalo Bills, and they were able to add draft capital.
Exactly. He just turned 21. He is only going to get better. He ran a 4.61, plays much faster than that. And when he was at Michigan State, he ran a bigger variety of routes. I think he's going to be really good. The A- came in because Ladd McConkey was still there, but this is a great pick for the Buffalo Bills. The Chargers trade up a few spots, Rick. They don't get a Michigan player, which is your bold prediction. Instead, they get wide receiver Ladd McConkey out of Georgia. A+ for me. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think he's the best route runner coming out in this year's draft. I think he may be a slot only, but in this system, he's going to be able to fit and separate underneath. Will be a nice security blanket for Justin Herbert.
There are worse consolation prizes in the Keenan Allen world than Ladd McConkey, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, I think both of them are going to be impact players for both of the teams.
So they lost Keenan Allen, they lost Mike Williams, they still have Josh Palmer, of course, Quentin Johnson going into year 2, and now Ladd McConkey joins that offense with Justin Herbert. The Falcons are back on the clock, 3 picks into the second round here, and they're taking defensive tackle, which we thought they were going to do early. Instead, they take Rook Ororo out of Clemson. I give this a B- because Johnny Newton was still sitting there, but I understand the pick. What do you think?
Yeah, no, this kid has length, he has athleticism, just learning the game of football. He's only played 2 years of high school football before he came in. Needs to get his pad level lower in the run game, but he has a lot of potential as an inline pass rusher.
I think he had, exactly, the athleticism is there, and I think the potential, as we talked about, to play sooner than later, because we thought that maybe Byron Murphy II would go 8th overall. Instead, of course, Michael Penix Jr. was the number 8 pick for Atlanta, and now they circle back and they get that defensive tackle. The Washington Commanders got their quarterback in Jaden Daniels early in the first round, Rick. They don't go offensive line here. Instead, they go defensive line. They get Johnny Newton out of Illinois. He could have been a first-round pick. A- was my grade because of some potential other needs. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he fell a little bit because of the injury he had at the end of the season. I don't know if he eventually worked out or not for any teams, but I think it gives them another inline pass rusher. They're going to have to generate pass rush on the quarterbacks in the NFC East, and I think this kid, with his motor, the way he plays sideline to sideline, and his ability to rush the passer, will be an excellent addition.
Is there a better group of interior defensive linemen than what Washington has, and Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and now Johnny Newton?
Yeah, but don't be surprised if they don't get a couple edge guys here before this is said and done.
That's right. They lost Montez Sweat. They lost Chase. The Patriots trade down a few spots. They pass on Ladd McConkey, but they get Jalen Polk, wide receiver out of Washington. I gave this a B-. I understand on some level, Rick, that you have Demario Douglas to play in the slot, and maybe you want to get Jalen Polk, who's inside-outside. He's a little bigger. Only ran the 4.52. What do you think of that B- grade?
Yeah, I'm okay with that grade. I think that he is not as sudden as Ladd McConkey. I think that he does a great job gliding into and out of his route. I'd like to see a little bit better burst. He can track the deep ball. He was one of the trio at the University of Washington that Michael Penix was thrown to. So I think he will help, but I don't know if I would have passed up Ladd McConkey for him.
And to be clear, Jalen Polk's a second-round pick all day long, but when you're balancing Ladd McConkey, a potential first-rounder, he could have gone late in round one. With Jalen Polk, I think Ladd gives you more sooner, it feels like?
Yeah, no, this kid will come in and contribute right away. He just needs to get a little stronger and a little bit more sudden.
So the Patriots got their quarterback in Drake May. Now they get him a wide receiver in Jalen Polk. The Titans have drafted 2 players. They combined for over 700 pounds of human. They got J.C. Latham in round 1. They circle back and get someone who's somehow bigger than J.C. Latham, Devondre Sweat, defensive tackle out of Texas, the second defensive tackle drafted through the first round, and some change here. I give this a C, Rick, for only one reason. The off-field concerns. He had the DUI a few weeks ago, and that's a problem for me. I know teams are concerned with his partying, and he had to talk about that at the combine in the interviews. Player-wise, he's great. I'm concerned about the off-field. What do you think about the C grade?
Yeah, no, I think he's a big, massive human being, and he's going to be able to plug against the run up front, and it's hard to move him off the point. The question is, can he give anything as a pass rusher in line? We saw some of the power down at the Senior Bowl in the one-on-one drills, but I think he's more of a two-down nose tackle. They're still going to have to get some inline pass rush.
And last year, Jalen Carter slipped a little bit. He was productive when he was on the field. It's not the end of the world for Devondre Sweat, but these are certainly questions that teams are asking prior to drafting someone like this, right?
Yeah, and apparently the Tennessee Titans felt comfortable after they did all their research on the DUI.
Yeah, and if you watch Devondre Sweat on the field, he is hard to block while also blocking out the sun, and now he's in Tennessee alongside Jeffrey Simmons. For a team that didn't have a lot of first-round picks in the Sean McVay era, they are crushing it so far. Round 1, they got Jared Verse. Round 2, they circle back, get another defender. Jared Verse's teammate from Florida State, Braden Fisk. I give this an A, defensive lineman. We loved him at the Combine. We loved him at the Senior Bowl. What's your reaction to this A grade from me?
Yeah, no, they're just taking good football players, and they're following their board and just taking the best players available as they come. This kid plays with as hot a motor and energy that anyone in this draft. And the knock on him was his short arms, but he talked about that when we were on the set at CBS at the Combine. And he is so quick off the ball that it's hard for the offensive linemen to get their hands locked on him. He knows how to work the edges of offensive guards or whoever he's going against, and he can put pressure on the quarterback. Watch him against Florida. He put an outstanding show on there, and he'll be a dominant defensive tackle, especially as a pass rusher in the near future.
First 2 picks, the Rams crushed it last year. They got Kobe Turner on day 3. They got Byron Young in the 3rd round. That defense is getting faster, stronger, and younger. Welcome to Los Angeles, Braden Fisk. The Eagles are all about solidifying the secondary. First round, Quinyon Mitchell. Second round, they get a first-round talent in Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. This is an A for me, Rick. My question to you is, where is Cooper DeJean going to play in that secondary?
Yeah, when we went through our mocks, or your mocks, and I was correcting them, it was amazing. We had both these guys at one point end up with Philadelphia, so it's ironic they both ended up there. I think they're going to put him at safety, let him learn there. I think most teams that I talked to thought he was going to be a great safety, not because he's not fast or athletic enough to play corner, but because of his football intelligence and how good of a tackler he is. So there's not a lot of great safeties in this draft class. This guy's probably the #1 safety, so I think Howie Roseman did a fantastic job. The Philadelphia Eagles got a lot better in the secondary over these first 2 days.
And you talked about that secondary struggled mightily at times last year. The entire defense did. New defensive coordinator Vic Fangio, and now he has 2 big weapons in that secondary in Philadelphia. The Saints move up into the 2nd round. They get a cornerback, Kool-Aid McKinstry. Rick, first-round talent. I gave it an A grade. Paulson Adebo's contract's going to be up after this season. This feels like a need in New Orleans.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great pick, and they're taking another, like a lot of these guys we're talking about have first-round value. Kool-Aid can fit in any system. He can play off. He can play press. I think he's the smoothest corner out of this draft, getting into and out of his transition. The question was the long speed, but I think he's so smart and intelligent. He does stay on top of receivers as he extended downfield. He's willing enough in run support, good enough where it's not a liability. So I think this is a great selection for the New Orleans Saints that fills a huge need.
Sneaky great selection, and they couple that with the offensive tackle Tully Fuaga in the first round. The Saints are off to a strong start in this draft. The Texans didn't have a first-round pick, but their first pick in the second round, Rick, Kamari Lassiter, cornerback out of Georgia. He played bigger and faster than what he timed and what he measured. He only ran in the 4.6s. Sort of a surprise in that sense. I gave the pick a B. There were still some other cornerbacks out there, Mikey Sanderson, for example, but I love Kamari Lassiter's game.
Yeah, I think he's going to fit the scheme that they run down there in Houston. I think he's a zone corner. He could probably play inside at Nick. The thing that really sticks out, he's more than physical and run support, that he is a great zone cover awareness guy. Excellent reacting to routes in front of him. My biggest concern is if the receiver gets on top of him, he has to turn his hips and he gets extended down the field. Can he stay with that receiver?
And even though he ran in the 4.6s, you have the SEC competition to lean against, and that sometimes outweighs what you might see in shorts and T-shirts, right?
Yeah, but he's 4.6.
You are what your time says you are, but he also is headed to Houston Texans as a cornerback. Great news for Kamari Lassiter. The Cardinals are off to a red-hot start, Rick. Marvin Harrison Jr., Darius Robinson in the first round. Then they come back and get the cornerback they desperately needed, Max Melton out of Rutgers. I give this an A-. I love the pick. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think he was a late riser.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about him a lot during the fall. Then all of a sudden through this pre-draft process, he continued to rise up draft boards. This kid can play slot. He can play outside. He has excellent speed. He's more than willing to come up and run support. I think the biggest thing is the technical things of this game. He needs to get a little bit smoother in and out of his transition. He needs to get a little bit smoother when he turns and gets extended down the field. He has more than enough speed to stay with receivers down the field. But I know this coaching staff, I know that they'll be able to correct a lot of those technique errors that he currently has.
And Jonathan Gannon showed in year one that he can get the most out of this defense, and I suspect this group's going to be a lot better in year two.
Yeah, and Jonathan Gannon's an excellent coach. In fact, did you know that he was a quality control guy in Minnesota when I was up there in the early 2007, 2008?
You have a pretty good track record, except for the part where you joined the podcast. Max Melton headed to Arizona, where he's going to have a chance for a lot of playing time early in his rookie season. One of our favorite players in the pre-draft process, Jackson Powers Johnson, finally hears his name called in round two. He's headed to the Las Vegas Raiders. He's going to have a chance to be a day one starter as well. Rick, I gave this an A. What do you think about that grade?
Yeah, I thought he was the most dominant center I've seen come out in a long time at the University of Oregon. He's big, he's strong, he's physical. He can move those nose tackles off at the point. He's stout in pass protection. He's played guard in the past. And Tom Telesco, and I know him very well, he's staying true to his board by getting Brock Bowers, who was probably the highest player on his board, and I'm sure Jackson Powers Johnson also was there as well.
All right, you have to answer this question. With the Rick Spielman board, how would you have graded Byron Murphy in the first round and then Jackson Powers in the second round? Is that higher than Brock Bowers and Jackson Powers?
I'm going to say I'm going to trust Tom Telesco, but I do like Jackson Powers Johnson because I dress like I have drip. I think that's what he said.
Jackson Powers Johnson did, in fact, say that Rick had drip, but that's a conversation for another time. For now, he's headed to Las Vegas for a chance to start right away for those Raiders. The Packers get Edgerrin Cooper, linebacker out of Texas A&M in round two. My linebacker one, your linebacker one. I give this an A, Rick. After getting Jordan Morgan in round one, they come back and get someone to help the middle of that defense.
Yeah, I wasn't so sure about the Jordan Morgan pick, but I am sure about this one. And with Jeff Hafley coming in as their defensive coordinator, former Boston College head coach, it's going to fit his scheme. They're going to a 4-3, which means even front instead of an odd front, which they ran under Joe Barry. This kid is an excellent athlete, can play sideline to sideline. He is one of the few linebackers that I see can knock running backs backward when he hits them in a hole. He's very good in coverage, and the one thing that I think people really recognize is that he can affect the quarterback when they send him on blitzes. So I think this is an A pick for me as well.
So Quay Walker, also an athlete that plays the linebacker position. They have some juice now at linebacker, former first-round pick. They get Edge Cooper in round two. He is headed to Green Bay. The Carolina Panthers are surrounding Bryce Young with playmakers. Xavier Legette at the end of round 1. They come back in round 2, Rick, and get running back Jonathan Brooks out of Texas. I give this an A-, only because there are some other positions perhaps they could have focused on at offensive line, but he's a dynamic player coming off the ACL injury, but there's no doubt that this offense is going to be much more explosive than they were last year.
Yeah, and Jerry Jones, please don't tell everybody you're draft playing that this is the guy that you were targeting in day 2. But he's a gifted runner. He's smooth. He's fluid. He's more of a weaver than a stop-start guy. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's not as dynamic as Bijan Robinson when he came out last year. I think that with the way Miles Sanders struggled last year, they still got Chuba Hubbard, but this will be an excellent addition. He doesn't have to play right away, so he can take his time coming off that ACL. But I know Dave Canales likes to run the ball, the new head coach at the Carolina Panthers. This will definitely.
The Giants had a need at safety, and they filled that need in the second round with Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota. Ricky gave us a B. We talked to Tyler at the Combine. Young man has an edge. He is tall. He is physical. Only ran in the 4.6s. I thought he played a little bit faster than that, but I wondered if maybe Jaden Hicks might have been a better fit for what they wanted to do. Clearly, the Giants thought otherwise.
No, and I'm going to agree with the Giants. I think this kid is a better fit for their defense. The reason I say that is he can play in the deep center of the field. He's not fast, but he plays everything in front of him. He has excellent anticipation. He has ball production, had a lot of interceptions at the University of Minnesota. He takes great angles when he comes downhill and run support. So I think this is a great fit for the New York Giants.
I agree. He's a really good player. We'll see where Jaden Hicks ends up going, but they also got Malik Neighbors. I'm guessing he's going to be pretty good as well. So the Giants are off to a strong start, getting 2 really quality players through the first 2 rounds. Jaguars had need at cornerback, but they also had need at interior defensive line. Mason Smith out of LSU, Rick, is headed to the Jaguars. I give this a B+, and you made a good point. He feels a need, and he feels like a GM Trent Baalke pick as well, right?
Yeah, no, he loves these big, long, athletic defensive tackles. Arik Armstead, they signed when he was released by the San Francisco 49ers. This kid, we were down at his pro day. When he walked into that facility, everybody stared at him because of what he looks like physically. I think he reminded me a little bit of Barmore, who came out of Alabama, that plays up in New England right now. He's just untapped right now on what he can potentially be. He missed some time earlier in his career with injuries. He was suspended early in the season last year for an NCAA violation. I think this guy has a high ceiling. Not only as a run defender, he needs to get his pads a little lower, but I think he can be an inline pass rusher as well.
And there was first-round buzz about him coming into the beginning of this season. He's a little inconsistent, but to Rick's point, there's an opportunity for him to get a lot better once he arrives in Jacksonville. Mason Smith, now with the Jags. National champion Chris Jenkins, defensive tackle from Michigan, is headed to Cincinnati. I gave this a B in part because Chris Jenkins tested through the roof, and sometimes at Michigan, you're asked to do your job and not necessarily be the player that you become in the NFL. What is your expectations for Chris once he gets to Cincinnati?
Yeah, this was a need for the Cincinnati Bengals after DJ Reader went up to the Detroit Lions. So he is a very sound defensive tackle is the best way to put it. He plays excellent with technique at the point versus the run. He uses technique to rush the inline passer. He's not a elite in any area, but he's very good in all areas. And the one thing, he comes from great pedigree, and he does play with his hair on fire as well. He just has some limitations, but he'll be a solid addition for the Cincinnati Bengals up front on their defensive line.
And by the way, the defensive line position is not one where you want to be freelancing. You want to do your job and do what's expected of you so your teammates can trust you, and that's exactly what Chris Jenkins brings, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, he'll be a solid, steady pro for a long time.
And now he's headed to Cincinnati, where he joins Amarius Mims, their first-round pick, and, of course, Joe Burrow and crew. Mikey Sainristil is headed to Washington, defensive back from Michigan, former wide receiver as well. I love this player. I love where he's headed. I give it an A. Washington's making some things happen, Rick.
Yeah, no, they were very active this offseason, signing a lot of players. They have to rebuild that whole roster. So I give a lot of kudos to Adam Peters and to Dan Quinn for what they're doing. This is another very good football player that loves the game, plays it with a lot of passion. I think he's a nick only. I don't think he's going to have. He has issues if he has to line up outside versus bigger receivers. Quick, athletic, excellent ball skills. Needs to get better in man coverage, just recognizing routes, but that'll come with the more time he's tasked on the job.
And also, he's a converted wide receiver, so he's going to learn. What if I told you, say 24 hours ago, that through 50 picks, the Commanders would have Jaden Daniels, Johnny Newton, and Mikey Sainristil? Would you believe me?
Yes, because I think Adam Perry, they're doing an excellent job.
Yeah, somebody had something to do with Adam Peters getting that job. All right, Mikey Sanderson, congratulations. You're headed to Washington. Join the Commanders. The Steelers got an offensive tackle in round 1, Rick and Troy Fautani. They circle back in round 2 and get the center they also desperately needed, Zach Frazier out of West Virginia, somehow still sitting there. A+ for me. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's a little rich. I know it's a little bit of a homer grade since you're a big Pittsburgh Steelers fan, but they have definitely helped their offensive line. Arthur Smith wants to run the football. Mike Tomlin, this is going to be a very physical football team. By getting these 2 offensive linemen and Zach Frazier, who was a former state high school wrestling champion, which is usually a great sign. They're going to be a great center to league because they know how to use leverage. I think he's a good athlete, not a great athlete, but smart, intelligent, great pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Great value. Centers typically fall out of the first round. That's the case with Zach Frazier, which is great news for Pittsburgh. Zach Frazier is their center headed into 2024. The Colts drafted the first defensive player off the board at 15 with Leatu Latu. They circle back in round 2, Rick, and they get a first-round talent, this time at wide receiver, A.D. Mitchell out of Texas. I give this an A. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I thought this kid really improved since he transferred in from Georgia to what he did this year down in Texas. If you watch the Alabama game, he put on a clinic. I still think he needs to develop as a route runner, but he's long, he's athletic, he has speed, he's a natural hands catcher. They just got another offensive weapon for Anthony Richardson.
Last year they drafted Josh Downs out of the slot. Anthony Richardson's going to return from injury. This offense is going to be stacked for Shane Steichen. Now that includes A.D. Mitchell. The Washington Commanders are crushing the draft through 2 rounds, Rick, and they get who I thought was one of my favorite players. Turns out it is, in fact, your favorite player, tight end Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State. A+ all day long. What do you think about that?
He was my favorite player first, so just so we can put that
I'll give you that.
This is a kid that has the most versatility for a tight end. You can put him at fullback, you can put him at H-back. He's an excellent blocker. He showed up as a receiver down at the Senior Bowl. He's a better athlete than I think people anticipated. He's a guy that was going to be a tone setter on the offensive side of the ball. When you watch him catch, he's an underrated athlete with the ball in his hands after the catch. Gives him versatility across the board on that offensive scheme that Cliff Kingsbury is going to run. This is an A++ for me.
Oh, you get an extra plus. By the way, when we talked to Mr. Sinnott at the Combine, who was he telling teams that he compared himself to?
Sam Laporta.
So if Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury get Sam Laporta, this is an A++++. Ben Sinnott headed to Washington. Because all Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator, needs in Cleveland is more firepower on the defense. Rick, they went down the road to Ohio State, got Michael Hall Jr., incredibly twitched up defensive lineman. I give this an A. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's a little rich because I think he's going to be a situational pass rusher. He is undersized, but there's no denying his first step quickness and his ability to get to the quarterback. I think he needs to be a little bit more consistent against the run, but that's due to his lack of size. But I think he'll be a very good inline pass rusher that may be in a rotation next year for him.
That was the Browns' first pick. Didn't come till round 2. They get Michael Hall Jr., the explosive defensive lineman out of Ohio State. The Miami Dolphins get Tua Tagovailoa some help along the offensive line, Rick. They get Houston offensive tackle Patrick Paul. We don't know how long Teron Armstead's going to play. I give this a B+.
Yeah, no, I love this kid's size. I love his length. I love his athleticism. I think he's just raw from a technical standpoint. He does play hard. He tries to finish blocks. He's just all over the place. He's like a baby giraffe right now. But I think as they develop him, he can be a starting left tackle in this league.
Well, I'll just say this. If a baby giraffe is playing right or left tackle for Tua Tagovailoa, good luck to the rest of the AFC East trying to pass rush. So Patrick Paul out of Houston, he is headed to South Florida. Marshawn Nealon almost transferred to Colorado. Rick, he decided to stay at Western Michigan, had a great season, and now he's headed to Dallas. Edge rusher, maybe he plays inside a little bit. We talked to him about that at the Combine. I give this a B+. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I love this kid's motor and energy. I think he's going to be a DPR, designated pass rusher. They did lose a pass rusher, their designated pass rusher, when Armstrong went to the Commanders with Dan Quinn. So this kid has excellent bend. He can get to the quarterback. I was talking to a defensive line coach who actually coached him down at the Senior Bowl, and all the guys he had down there, he thought this kid had the most upside.
Great news for Dallas. I know their fans weren't excited about the lack of activity during the offseason, but they should be pretty excited about Marshawn Nealon now headed to the Cowboys. We all know about Dallas Turner, but the other edge rusher, number 41 at Alabama, is now a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. Chris Braswell Do not sell yourself short on him. We talked to Will Anderson, and he said he is someone to be reckoned with, and now he is headed to Tampa Bay. I give this, Rick, an A.
Yeah, very good football player. Had to wait his turn. He was behind Will Anderson, behind Dallas Turner. Got his opportunity last year and took advantage of it. I'd like to see him a little more physical at the point versus run. Not holding up blocks, but getting off blocks and locating the ball. But this kid can pin his ears back, come off the edge. This is a great fit for Todd Bowles in the Tampa Bay defense.
Yeah, shocked that Todd Bowles likes athletic edge rushers. Chris Braswell, Yaya Diaby, Logan Hall, Joy Tryon-Shoyinka, on and on it goes. Chris Braswell is headed to Tampa Bay. Javon Bullard, defensive back, playing the slot, can move a little bit all over here, Rick. He is now headed to Green Bay. I love this player. I love this pick. I thought he had really good tape. I thought he had a good Senior Bowl. A from me.
Yeah, no, he's a very good football player, better football player than he is maybe as an athlete in one-on-one situations. We saw that down at the Senior Bowl where he got exposed a little bit when he had to cover a slot. But once 11-on-11 and team part of the practice started, he was all over the place. This is a very good football player. To me, a poor man's Brian Branch, who we saw play very well in Detroit last year. Brian Gutekunst, the general manager of the Green Bay Packers, said he wanted a young safety to go with Xavier McKinney. I think they got an ace in this one.
Round 2, they get Edge Cooper, the linebacker at Texas A&M. They circle back, get Javon Bullard later in round 2. Great start to day 2 for the Green Bay Packers. Blake Fisher, the quote-unquote other tackle at Notre Dame opposite Joe Alt, who came in more highly rated, is now headed to Houston, where he pencils in as potentially the starter at right tackle, protecting C.J. Stroud. I gave this a B. I wanted to see a little bit more consistency from him, Rick, but that doesn't mean it can't happen once he gets to Houston.
Yeah, no, he is physical as a run blocker at the point. I think he needs to clean up his technique as a pass blocker. He actually got benched in the Louisville game this last offseason, getting beat to the inside numerous times. I think if has all the physical abilities to be a starting right tackle in this league, he does have to clean up his technique, and you love the way he plays and the demeanor he plays with, but also you have to play under control, and that's the one issue that he has. I think he gets too out of control at times.
Last year on day 2, they got starting center Juice Scruggs, who can also play guard. This year, potentially starting right tackle Blake Fisher, headed to Houston. Another one of Rick's favorite players in this draft, Cole Bishop out of Utah. He's headed to Buffalo. I gave this a B+, Rick. They lost Micah Hyde. They lost Jordan Poyer. He fills an obvious need, even though they have, who's the young man they have coming back here? Taylor Rapp is returning. Yes. Yeah. So what do you think about this?
Yeah, I love him as a football player. He is a downhill safety. He's a thumper, takes great angles to the ball. He's a little limited in coverage, especially if he has to work in the center of the field. So I think he's more of a half-field safety. But I love his instincts and awareness, and I think this is one heck of a football player. So they lost 2 contributors, key contributors at the safety position. Taylor Rapp and Cole Bishop now will fill those 2 needs.
No first-round pick because the Bills traded down, but in the top of the second, they get Keon Coleman, the wide receiver. Now they circle back towards the end of the second round and get their safety, Cole Bishop. Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn is one of the happiest people right now in the Detroit area. They keep adding on defense, Rick. The latest addition, Ennis Rakestraw Jr. out of Missouri. I love this young man. You love this young man. I get Devin Witherspoon physicality vibes when I watch him. A- for me.
Yeah, no, this is a Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes fit. Just go out and find me a very good football player. This kid is tough. He's a tone setter on the defense. He's not afraid, even though he's a little undersized, to come up and rack people in the run game. He's very good in zone coverage. A little stiff when he has to turn his hips. But I think this is going to add depth to a much-needed secondary that needed a rehaul after this last offseason.
They signed Carlton Davis, so they've added some physicality on the outside. They drafted Terrion Arnold in the first round. And then in round 2, they keep bolstering the secondary with Ennis Rakestraw Jr. The Ravens are without Morgan Moses, and they get their right tackle, Roger Rosengarten, into the second round here. I give this an A-. I think sometimes we count the 2 plays he struggled in the finals against Michigan against them. I think overall he was surprisingly athletic and probably a better player than maybe we're giving him credit for.
Yeah, no, the biggest thing and the biggest knock I have on him, he needs to get his pad level a little lower and he needs to get stronger through his lower body. But this kid loves to play the game. I think he tries to grind his way in production versus as a run blocker. I think he needs to lower his pads and sink his hips, and they're going to bull rush him. but he has excellent feet to mirror any type of finesse-type moves coming off the edge.
So Daniel Faalele is currently listed as a right tackle. Do you think Roger Rosengarten has a chance to win that job?
I think there'll be competition. I just wish he needs just to get a little bit stronger, but I think all the other tools are there.
Absolutely, and I think the Ravens have done a great job finding hidden gems, and they found another one perhaps in Roger Rosengarten. The Chiefs got the fastest player in this draft class in round 1, Xavier Worthy. I don't think the guy they took in the second round, Kingsley Sumatea, runs a 4.21, but he is going to be tasked with playing the tackle position, and it could be the left side, it could be the right side. He's out of BYU. I gave this a B. I wanted to see a little more consistency in this tape that I didn't see the last 2 years. Number 1, do you like the grade? And number 2, where are you playing him?
Yeah, I think I like your grade well enough right now. I think he does have some upside to develop. I think he can play on either side. We saw that where he lined up on the left side down to Senior Bowl, also lined up on the right side. He's athletic enough to play left tackle. He'll probably get in competition with Wanye Morris, who they drafted last year. Juwan Taylor should be the starting right tackle for him, so I imagine he'll go to the left side. Just needs to get his pad level a little bit lower. He's a little stiff through his lower body, but I do like the athleticism and the upside.
And he doesn't have to start right away, as you talk about, Rick. So the rich get richer in Kansas City, protecting Patrick Mahomes. Kingsley Sumatea headed to the Chiefs. This guy feels like a 49er, Rick. Renardo Green, one of the most physical cornerbacks in this class. He is now headed to San Francisco as their second-round pick. I gave this a B+. Is there any concerns that he might be too physical?
No, I think he is best as a press corner, and you want to talk about a guy not letting a receiver off and giving him free release at the line of scrimmage. This guy's going to battle you all day long. He's very sticky, staying with receivers into and out of their cuts underneath. The one concern I have is his overall speed. If he gets extended down the field, he's more than tough enough coming up and run support. This is definitely a 49er fit because of the physicality that he brings to the position.
Well, he'll get plenty of practice because he'll be going up against first-round pick Ricky Pearsall in practice, and now Renardo Green adds one more element to that secondary in San Francisco. Caden Wallace, right tackle out of Penn State, played opposite Olaf Ashnu, is now headed to New England, and the question becomes, Rick, where's he going to play? The last draft, we saw the Patriots take a lot of interior offensive linemen. They need help on the outside now that they have Drake May. Michael Onwenu's penciled in the right side. What's Caden Wallace's future? Is he a left tackle?
I don't know. I didn't think he was a left tackle athlete. I love his physicality, but I think that he's a waist bender. He gets over his ski tips, as we like to say. If he does get his hands on you, he'll try to finish you. But I don't know how athletic he is to play on the edges at the next level.
Well, we'll find out. I gave this a B+ because I like the player coming out of Penn State. And by the way, the Patriots are going all offense early on. Drake May, Jalen Polk, the wide receiver, and now they get some offensive line help in Caden Wallace. The Giants are focusing on the secondary on day 2, Rick. They took Tyler Nubin in the second round, the safety out of Minnesota. They circle back in round 3, get the cornerback Andrew Phillips out of Kentucky. I give this a B. I like some things about Andrew Phillips, but I wasn't sure I liked him enough to take him until probably early day 3 for me.
Yeah, no, I think this guy is going to be an ideal Nick because of his instincts, because of his ability to support in the run. He is a little sticky, which means he has hesitation into and out of his transition. The biggest question I have is if he has to turn and get extended down the field, does he have enough speed? But I do love his instincts and his football intelligence. That's why I think he'll make an ideal Nick.
Last year, first-round pick Deonte Banks had a fantastic rookie season, the cornerback out of Maryland. This year, Tyler Nubin and Andrew Phillips joined that secondary for the New York Giants. The Dallas Cowboys are solidifying the offensive line to get Tyler Guyton in the first round, circle back in round 3, get interior offensive lineman Cooper Beebe out of Kansas State. I give this a B+. I liked his tape the last 2 seasons, but I'll ask you this, Rick. Where is he going to play in Dallas?
Yeah, that'll be interesting. He may even project to center because they lost Biotish to the Commanders this year. So he's played all 5 positions since he's been at Kansas State, left guard, left tackle, and even some center. So they're just stacking up because what makes Dallas so good is that offensive line. They've always had one of the top offensive line groups in the NFL, and they're just replenishing it with both these young, talented players.
So some questions to answer. Tyler Guyton, where are you going to play him? Cooper Beebe, where do you play him? There will be in those offensive line meetings for Dallas. Cooper Beebe headed to the Cowboys. The Chicago Bears added developmental offensive tackle in Kieran Amagaje out of Yale. And Rick, we spoke with him at the Combine. This man does not lack confidence, and nor does he lack the physical gifts you would like to see in a top-flight offensive tackle. I give the pick a C+. I think the upside is there. 3-4 years from now, we could be saying he's a truly special player. But they had needs along the defensive line. They had needs with more developed offensive tackles ready to help right away. But I do love the potential with Kieran.
Yeah, this is a projection pick. And when you look at him, you look at him move physically on the tape when he was at Yale. There's no question about his length, his athleticism. He dominated at that level. He just only played 4 games because of an injury this year. Would have loved to see him down at the Senior Bowl.
Right.
He was invited to go down there, but wasn't able to participate because of the injury. So this is kind of a projection, but I can see what they saw in the raw physical tools this kid has.
It's one of those things, had he gone to the Senior Bowl and had a great week, he would be talked about as probably a second-round pick, correct?
Yeah, no, he could have really helped his stock if he went down there and was able to participate, but he was injured, so it wasn't because he didn't want to compete.
Absolutely. 1,500 snaps, only 1 sack. Kieran Amagaje headed to Chicago. Rick, I think the Rams have mastered the draft. They just keep hitting home runs after one. They had the first-round pick for the first time since 2016. They nailed that with Jared Verse. This time they go offense in round 3. They get the Michigan running back Blake Corum, who's going to team up with the former Notre Dame running back Kyron Williams. I give this an A. I think the biggest surprise for me that they didn't target Audric Estime because we thought perhaps he'd be reunited with his Notre Dame teammate.
Yeah, no, this kid has excellent inline vision. He can make stop-start type cuts. He can void linebackers at the second level. The biggest knock on him, I don't know how good a receiver he is out of the backfield. I don't know if he has a long speed to take it the distance once he gets in space, but excellent vision, excellent football player. He'll help them in a backup role at the running back position.
Long speed was one of the concerns about Kyron Williams coming out of Notre Dame. Turns out he's fine in that offense. I think Blake Corum also has a chance to be really good with Matthew Stafford, still a quarterback in L.A. 3 rounds, 3 picks, 3 offensive players in Pittsburgh. What year is this, Rick? They got offensive line help in rounds 1 and 2, and they get some wide receiver help, much needed in round 3. Slot receiver Roman Wilson ran a 4.39. Feels a huge need. You have George Pickens. Deontay Johnson's gone. I give it an A.
Yeah, the Michigan run is starting in the second day, and you see a lot of the national champions going to the NFL. And this one is a very good slot receiver, excellent quickness into and out of his routes. I remember watching that Nebraska game, and he made that one-handed catch over that defensive back. So I think this is an excellent pick. They needed to get more receiver help to go along with George Pickens. So I love this pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Arthur Smith, the offensive coordinator, has to be happy. Russell Wilson, the new quarterback, also has to be happy. We'll see if the Steelers target defense later in the draft, but so far it's been all offense in Pittsburgh. It's not been sexy for the Dallas Cowboys, but Rick, they are checking boxes. Most recently, Notre Dame linebacker Maris Leafau. He's going to replace Leighton Vander Esch, who had to retire. They still have DeMarvion Overshown, who they drafted last year, but tore his ACL in preseason, the athletic off-ball linebacker from Texas. I grade this a B. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a little rich for me. I think that he is potentially a 3-down linebacker. I thought that he needs to be a little bit more disciplined finding the ball carry. At times when you see offensive linemen get out to him at the second level, he has a tendency to get tied up. Good enough athlete in coverage. I think he's a solid backup type that may contribute on special teams.
They did sign Eric Kendricks. I thought he's a pretty good wrap-up tackler, but to your point, his NFL future may be as a backup and special teamer. Either way, that linebacker, Maris Leafau from Notre Dame, headed to Dallas. The Packers are solidifying the backfield. They lost Aaron Jones. They added Josh Jacobs. A.J. Dillon's in the last year of the deal. To get Marshawn Lloyd out of USC, 5'9" and change, 220 pounds, 4.46 speed. I like the addition. I give this a B.
Yeah, no, the thing that I think he's going to really help him is as a receiver out of the backfield. When you watch him at USC, you watch him on screens, he's one of those running backs that can go from 0 to 60 miles an hour, an instant accelerator, has great inline vision in open field where he runs the space. I don't know how tough he is as an inline runner, but they got 2 thud running backs that can do that for the Green Bay Packers. So a great addition to the Green Bay as far as adding to Jordan Love and another weapon out of the backfield to throw the ball to.
You mentioned Jordan Love, a pretty big-time, athletic, big-arm quarterback. A couple towns away in the same division, Marshawn's former teammate, Caleb Williams, now in Chicago. Marshawn Lloyd headed to Green Bay.
Emory Hunt is all the playbook here. Taking a look at Will Shipley, the outstanding tailback coming from Clemson, going to the Philadelphia Eagles. I give this an A+. Reason being, special teams. He is someone that can help you out, not only in the run game and also as a receiver, giving Saquon Barkley a break or two, but in the new age of this return game, he is someone that you want touching the football as a kickoff returner or a punt returner. But as a kickoff returner, because you can set up these blocks now and create different little blocking schemes to pop a long run, Will Shipley can be the guy that can help the Eagles stay explosive on the third unit, special teams unit, right out of the gate. Looking at Ray Davis, the outstanding rookie from Kentucky going to the Buffalo Bills, I give this one an A. The reason being, look at his game and not his size. He is short, not small. He has great vision, great footwork, great agility, and would pair up perfectly with James Cook, giving them a fantastic 1-2 combination in the backfield. Looking at Braylon Allen, the selection by the New York Jets coming out of Wisconsin. Bruising running back. He was my running back 1 in this draft class. So they're getting a big guy with the ability to make someone miss, good footwork, good vision, good balance, and would pair up nicely with what they already have in tow in the backfield. So I'm giving this one a B+ because you have a crowded backfield, but nonetheless, great talent in Braylon Allen. Sione Vaki out of Utah, the safety/running back going to the Detroit Lions. I'm going to give this one an A. Why? Day 3, you're looking at core special teamers, and Vaki can do just that as a kickoff special or return specialist because of his ability as a running back and also in coverage because of his ability as a safety. So he not only helps you in the return game, but also in the kickoff coverage game. You want guys that are used to making great open field tackles. He can do that. And if you need him to carry the football, he can do that as well. The 5th round selection of Spencer Rattler to the New Orleans Saints, I give this grade an A. Big reason why: it gives them a succession plan at the quarterback position, someone that has talent, that has upside, and can sit and learn behind Derek Carr. So I love the pick for New Orleans because it strengthens their QB2 position currently on the roster. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. going to the Philadelphia Eagles, I give this an A+. He helps them on both ends of defense. He can play the run rather well, he can blitz, and he also does a great job dropping back in pass coverage, has great hands to turn the ball over. So this instantly helps them at the second level of their defense. Jordan Travis going to the New York Jets, I absolutely love the pick, giving it an A. Reason being, he is someone that provides a succession plan for Aaron Rodgers, a complete winner, guy that just moves the football up and down the field, whether it's with his arm or with his legs. He is someone that's the true dual threat at the position, could learn a lot from Aaron Rodgers. Patriots' new quarterback in Joe Milton out of Tennessee. I'm giving this one a B-, not because I don't like the talent, but just it's a little bit too early to take a guy at quarterback when you've taken one 3rd overall. So the fit is a bit questionable, but I do like the arm strength. I do like the arm talent, and we'll see how he'll work out in the preseason, because if he can get his lower body mechanics in shape and ready to go, they may have someone that they can develop and stash down the line.